Hello again, wonderful moss flutists. This is Veronica Mascaro again, talking to you from the great beyond about the flute technical etude for this year. If you have viewed the first video or the video highlighting the lyrical etude, this is the same composer, Ernesto Kohler, wonderful Italian flutist. And I promised you on that video that we would have his years on here, 1849 to 1907. So he was a 19th century flutist and also a composer. Most of the compositions that he wrote were for flute because that was his instrument. So we're calling this the technical etude. Of course, both of the etudes have technique to them and both of the etudes have lyricism to them. It's just a matter of one being a little bit faster than the other one. This is the Allegretto. This, in opposition to the Lento and Cantabile etude, this is actually in cut time. So cut time has an abbreviation of the C, or the abbreviation for common time, with a slash through it, and it's equal to, if you slash the 4 in half, it's 2-2. So 2 beats in a measure. And the half note receives 1 beat. So now your half note is the center to our rhythmic universe. And that's exactly what cut time is. Marzale is Italian for March-like. And you can tell up at the Allegretto marking. The Allegretto marking is actually for the half note, not for the quarter note. The quarter note would sound much, much faster. And this is played in a march-like sort of tempo. The other thing that I would say is we talked a little bit on the slower etude, the tonalities being just a little bit more elegant, a little bit more warm vibrato. This, I would use a little bit more shimmery vibrato on this particular work. Just to kind of coordinate the stylistic interpretation, the tempo, the rhythms, the fact that it's an allegretto. So it's very different. It's kind of a polar opposite to the slower etude. We have a dolce again in here, so we are going to play this sweetly. The key signature has changed in this area, so that will help you just a little bit. And then, of course, octave displacements when you get up to 25, which are kind of tricky in here. And it's kind of an interesting cut because it actually ends softer. I would say no further down than a mezzo piano. The content that comes after this makes more sense as far as the lower level dynamic, but because we're ending at measure 32, I would say a good healthy mezzo piano would be a good idea. So I'm going to play this for you with a tempo marking of, we'll do a little bit of a tweener here. So I'm going to use 80 just for now, just as a basic tempo, which is kind of like in between the written tempo, the printed tempo. Composers like Kohler didn't really use numbers. They used words to describe what they wanted in the music, mostly because they were describing this music to themselves, not to somebody else. So it was a little bit different. But it's quite a charming work. Notice how there's no dynamic marking at the very, very beginning. I would say a good, healthy mezzo forte is a great place to start this. Makes a statement without being too loud too soon. 1, 2, 1. So I would say at the very, very end, maybe no rallentando, mostly because it's going into other content. You certainly could. I don't think that any judge would take points away from it if you took a poco rallentando. But for my purposes, I like a senza rallentando. So without slowing down, senza. It's a good Italian word, of course, without. Okay, so a couple of things. Watch out for the articulation when you get to 25. These are quite difficult because of the octave displacements, and you have to work on those accents. Also, the decrescendo, so moving away from measure 28 and then moving towards measure 29. For my purposes, mezzo forte in the very beginning, and then when you have the restatement starting from measure 9, I'd say maybe a good forte. I like a crescendo at the end of measure 8, going into the restatement, just so you're doing something a little bit different. I also play 17. I do a little bit of a decrescendo into 17, and maybe more of a mezzo piano plus. I still like to have presence, but I like to make sure that the accents are speaking. That's your melodic content in there. The rest of the notes are static, what we call static notation. 17 and 18 are what we call oblique motion in music, where you're moving up or down, but you have a steady stream of note, which is the G natural in this particular case. And then you have that same coming away from measure 20 and then going towards. One other, I got a little ahead of myself, I apologize. Measure 4. I would do just a little bit more stress release on the D natural to the B natural. And I would do the same exact thing in measure 12, just at a different dynamic, maybe just a little bit higher dynamic, just for some different sorts of colors and shaping, of course. And then when you get to 25, again, just a little bit softer in this particular area, mostly so that the accents come out. There's also a decrescendo that happens in measure 23, so you come back nicely. And then a crescendo, and then at 29, maybe just a little bit more. I would say maybe a mezzo forte. And then I usually do a little bit of a crescendo going into 31 to hit that forte and then drawing back. So, like I said, more of a shimmery vibrato. It brings out the marsale quality in this. I think that the dolce area is kind of tricky because of the fact that you're undulating into those accents. You're pushing into those accents. So sometimes it can sound just a little bit, I don't know, unmusical. So you have to make sure that the G naturals, that you don't chop off the second note of the slur, and the G naturals have good structure to them. So enough length that you can, again, put the notes together so it doesn't sound choppy. What you're not looking for is, but more smoothness. And then the same thing at 25, just with a different articulation. But just very, very smooth through all of this. Just really very seamless. So best of luck to everyone.